It's the Arch Advocate Show, starring Hugh Beaumont, Tony Dowd, and Pete Dobson as the advocates. Yes, I was going to use the Leave It to Beaver music, but then I thought to myself, hang on a second, I don't know if that's licensed. I don't know if I use that music, if my podcast host company is going to kick me off and say a bunch of bad things about me to other podcast hosting companies. That's actually how it works, folks. You get blacklisted in the podcast community. Can you believe that? There's a way to podcast where it's absolutely free and you still have syndication available to you, but I have to figure that stuff out later. Listen, to the crypto creeps first. We're going to start off with a little cryptocurrency news, a little bit of buzz. $50 billion came flooding into the cryptocurrency market since yesterday, all right? So what happened? What's, like, when things like that happen, $50 billion now, all right, that's not no small chunk of change, is it? It's a lot of money. Where did it come from and why did it come in, right? So as it is that's a new, market that's fascinating and beguiling and, a whole bunch of other adjectives, you have to stop, right? Ask yourself, so slow it down, right? Don't take your emotions for just a second and set it off to the side and just ask okay, what's different? What happened? Why did this money come in? Well, as it turns out, it's, the middle of the week towards the end of the month. And so that's like one of the first things you should look at, right? The calendar. What time of year is it? Is there something, on a calendar that might show like some sort of consistent pattern? And the thing is that this is typically in the second half of the month, in the middle of the week, right? Tuesdays or Wednesdays, middle towards the end of the month, is what's called contract expiration. Right? There's a futures market on Bitcoin now, and it has been for many months. And what happens is like in a short position, because this is what I'm not trying to dance around it. Here's what happened. All right. Well, from last month to this month, or over the last several months to this month, there have been people that have been opening up what are called short positions. And a short position is where you are telling the market, I contractually agree to sell you something in the future, right? I'm not going to sell it to you today. I'm going to sell it to you on, July 17th, right? So you could have done that last month. You could have done that 2 months ago, 3 months ago, whatever, right? So when that contract is opened, right, it would appear to the market that people are selling Bitcoin, right? So that's a negative pressure on the price of Bitcoin. It's going to push that cost down, right? Because it would appear that people are selling, because that's exactly what a short contract is. It's an agreement to sell. So you've already sold it, right? When that contract comes to fruition, right? When it's time for everybody to honor their contract. So somebody entered into a contract, said, I will sell this to you. Somebody on the other end of that contract said, okay, well, on July 17th or 18th, I will buy it. You see what I'm saying? That's what a futures contract is. It's two parties. It is a contract between two people. So what happened last night, between yesterday and today, is those contracts came into fruition, and those people that had agreed to sell, right, their Bitcoin was then purchased, right? So a flood of money came in buying Bitcoin because the people on the other end of that contract had agreed to buy it. Do you understand what I'm saying? They bought it at a much higher price than what Bitcoin was at, right? And so they lost their asses. They lost money. They bought Bitcoin for a price that's higher than what the market says that it is. Do you understand? So that sends a very it paints a distorted picture of the market, because it looks like everybody's buying Bitcoin because they're enthusiastic about Bitcoin and they're eager to own Bitcoin. But no, it's not. It's just contract resolution. and it looks like people are buying, but it's not. It's actually a whole bunch of people getting screwed, right? And they're buying a bunch of Bitcoin at a price that's much higher than what's called the spot price is, or the spot rate, right? So that $50 billion that you saw coming into the market yesterday, yes, it bleeds over into other currencies because everybody looks at, oh, Bitcoin's on a run. I guess it's time to buy Tether. I guess it's time to buy, whatever, Ethereum, place your altcoin here. That's what happened, folks. I challenge you, find me any piece of news where anything changed. Oh, MasterCard and Visa figured out a way to use cryptocurrencies. Nope, that didn't happen. President Trump said everybody should buy Bitcoin. That's going to be the thing in the future. Nope. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Except for one thing, futures contracts. That's what happened. Sorry to be the bearer of bad tidings. That's enough of that. To the crypto creeps, I thank every single one of you for continuing to listen to the Arch Advocate podcast. Now, couple of things. I owe everybody in the world, I owe everybody on the planet a gigantic apology. You see, there was a thing in our history as Americans where there's this guy, he was a kooky guy, his name was Joseph McCarthy. And he was a congressman, I believe, or a senator. Here, let me pull this up. Senator, from Wisconsin. From 1947 until his death in 1957. He was a young man, too, when he died. I think he was 48, right? You look at a picture of him, it's like... You ever look at pictures of older pictures of old people? And it's like, man, they look so much older. Like, even look at high school pictures from, like, the 1960s. They all look like they're in their 40s. Probably because all on account of all the scotch and cigarettes. But Joseph McCarthy was a Marine. All right, he born in Grand Chute, Wisconsin. McCarthy commissioned into the Marine Corps in 1942. So, boy, he was really kind of old to be a young officer. Anyways, the McCarthy Witch-Hunt. Right? McCarthy went on this weird tangent where he started accusing a whole bunch of people of being communists, right? And it's a huge mark, like a black stain in the history of the American story. Right? There's this crazy loony guy who's just running around calling everybody a communist, right? And the reason I owe everybody this apology because I have always said, for a long time I've said that Joseph McCarthy was a bad person. He was a crazy person, right? Nobody's going to be a communist. Nobody wants to be a communist. Like, why was this guy, why did he have such a hard-on for communism? You know what I mean? And the thing about that is the reason I owe everybody an apology is because I can see now, holy crap, he was right. He was absolutely right. You people, did you know, for example, in 1954, Congress passed what was called the Communist Control Act. Let me read this to you. Congress passes the Communist Control Act in response to the growing anti-communism hysteria, and I'm reading an article, by the way, in the United States. Though full of ominous language, many found the purpose of the act unclear. In 1954, the Red Scare still raged in the United States, although Senator Joseph McCarthy, the most famous of the Red Hunters in America, had been disgraced earlier in the summer of 1954. And when he tried to prove that communists were in the U.S. Army, and most Americans still believed that communists were at work in their country, responding to this fear, Congress passed the Communist Control Act in August of 1954. And the act declared that the Communist Party... So keep in mind, this is an act of Congress that is still on the books. Okay? So it's still the law of the land. The Communist Party of the United States, Yes, the act declared that the Communist Party of the United States, through purportedly a political party, is in fact an instrumentality of a conspiracy to overthrow the government of the United States. End quote. The act went on to charge that the party's role, quote, role as the agency of hostile foreign power renders its existence a clear and continuing danger to the security of the United States, end quote. That's what Congress said in 1954. It was an act of Congress. It is on the books. The reason I emphasize that part of it is because what that means is it doesn't matter how you feel about that. You can love it, you can hate it, it does not matter. It is the law of the land. It is an act of Congress, right? If you want to change it, then you need to get the new Congress, whatever Congress we have right now, and a whole bunch of other things that, functions of government to overturn it. You can do that, but man, it's a lot of work, right? Like overturning the Patriot Act, which I would be a big fan of, right? If that were to happen, I would be totally on board and send money to my congressman or whatever I would need to do. I would be in favor of that, but I would go into it understanding it's a lot of work. Right now, the Patriot Act, which I do not like at all, is the law of the land. It doesn't matter how I feel about it. It's the law, right? So that being said, I'm sorry to be so exhaustive in my explanation. The fact is, McCarthy was right. John Brennan was the leader. He was the very head of the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, right? A organization that has been setting up and tearing down governments since their inception. They've been running black ops and wet works and assassinations. Like these are people that have been doing very nefarious work. Now I'm sure people in the CIA, I'm sure there's, just like with the FBI or any other group of people, I'm sure there's a lot of good people there doing God's work. But the fact of the matter is that a communist, now this is not conspiracy theory, people. We know that John Brennan voted communist in 1974. We know that. He was the head of the CIA. A communist got to be at the head of the CIA. That is, if you're not clear just yet, what I'm getting at is that that's a big, big effing problem. And Joseph McCarthy saw it coming. McCarthy said that there were communists in the army, right? And McCarthy was a Marine. I don't know. I'm not completely familiar with his history, but I don't know if he, ever accused any other Marines of his fellow Marines of being communists. But look, the fact is that the communists have infiltrated our government. And one of the things, other than the sheer tyranny of will, that you're going to need to cultivate in the days to come. Other than that, what we have to fight, what's coming, the flood that's coming, is the fact that it is on the books, the Communist Control Act of 1954. It is the law of the land. And so we have that on our side. And we need to figure out, how did this communist get into one of the greatest seats of power in the United States, right? The greatest seat of power in the United States is the Oval Office. But then you've got the director of the FBI, you've got the director of the CIA, you've got the director of Homeland Security, you've got the director of FEMA. Like, there are other seats of power that are, they're less than the Oval Office, but don't get it twisted, people. Those are very powerful seats. And a commie, right? By the way, no coincidence. Well, I'm going to sound like a crazy person on this one. James Comey, commie. You know what I mean? Like, God plays little tricks like that. You know what I mean? Something in the, what's in a name? Who was it that said that? Was it Shakespeare or was it Plato? Like, what's in a name? Like, there's actual significance to that. But then you get all weird in numerology and all that other sort of thing. But a communist. John Brennan is a communist. His voting record shows it. Like, he was he was the guy that McCarthy was looking for, and he made it all the way to the top. And now that guy, who is no longer the director of the CIA, that guy is calling to the American people for the American military to overthrow the federal government. That is a problem. A big one. We are going to have to address that problem as a people. It's coming. You're not going to have to address it today, right? But eventually that problem is going to, it's like a zit, like a pimple. Like you can see it on the face right now. It's not quite come to head yet, but that sucker's going to come to a head and it's going to pop. And it's going to make a big mess and you better be ready for it, right? Here's an example. Listen, I've made it clear on my podcast previously. One of the things that I despise the most in life, not the thing, but one of the biggest things, well, here's a couple of things. I hate it when Christians misquote Jesus, right? Because it happens a lot in Christian circles. I hate that. It drives me nuts, right? I am a Christian. I am a follower of Jesus Christ, so I'm very particular about those precious words that we have recorded that he said. When Christian people misquote Jesus, it drives me nuts, right? One of the other things that I hate is unsolicited advice. Now, I love taking advice, right? I need advice. Man, I'm not a complete human being. Like, there's a lot of things I don't know. There's a lot of things I screw up, and I need advice. I need mentorship. You know what I mean? I need older, wiser, not even necessarily older, but just wiser. You know what I mean? There's people that are younger than me that have things figured out, and it's like, dude, if you have something figured out, I need you to instruct me. Help me, please. You know what I mean? Help me get through life. Tell me what you figured out. But man, if I didn't ask you for it, don't give me advice, please. Unsolicited advice is it's awful. It's like, dude, I don't know you. I didn't ask you for anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I ask you for something, be honored by that. It means I respect you a lot. To come to you and say, hey, listen, I'm real stupid and you're real smart. Would you please help me out? Like, listen to Ian, Bad Wolf, as he's known on our Telegram. By the way, if you want to join the Telegram group, go on to archavocate.com, go down to the bottom, click Telegram, open it up, join the conversation. But Bad Wolf, you know what I mean? That guy's giving me free, technical advice because, like, that's what he did for a living for, a great many years. Like, he knows that stuff, so I can go to him and be like, dude, I'm really screwed up here. And he'll tell me, right? But don't be, like, just volunteering advice. Like, that's just annoying. But another thing that I really hate is when people cite sources, right? When they're trying to explain, like, their facts to you. Oh, man, I know these facts, but I can't really verify anything that I'm about to tell you. It drives me nuts. Like, there was a Joe Rogan episode with the guy from Blink-182. Did you guys see that? Now, Blink-182 is a San Diego band, so I'm very protective of their image. You know what I mean? Because they're one of me. But man, those guys are dumb. That guy, the guy from Blink-182, he goes on to Joe Rogan and he's talking about all these government conspiracies. And he's like, well, I can't tell you how I know this. It's like, well, then don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say things and then not be able to prove what you're saying. Now, why did I just spend the last 5 minutes telling you about things that I hate, particularly that last one? Right? Don't cite don't cite facts and then not be able to back them up. The reason I tell you that is because that's exactly what I'm about to do. Now, listen, I'm sorry to do this to you. I used to be a big fan of the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Not the new Daily Show with unfunny South African guy, but the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. I used to love that show. I loved it. It was, Jon Stewart, I felt, took shots at everybody equally. You know what I mean? I mean, he fought a little bit harder when it came to Sean Hannity and, a couple others, but for the most part, he blasted everybody. And it was funny. It was really funny and really well done. And I loved that show. So I'm assuming, like, if you're like me, right? You're a conservative, you're on the right, and you're, possibly even Christian, whatever. You're probably, if you're my age, around my age, then you probably were a big fan of Jon Stewart. I'm hoping that that's true. So maybe you can help me out because I've looked all over the internet and I can't find it. But there was this one episode and because you remember his show, sometimes he would have like super famous people on, like actors or whatever, but for the most part, it was authors. He would have people onto his show that had written books about things that were intriguing to him. There was one particular episode, and I cannot find the guy's name. I cannot find. I've put in a gazillion different ways of searching it on Google for this one particular episode, but there was this one dude. And by the way, if you can remember this, the guy, his book, the name of the book, whatever, even the episode of the Jon Stewart Daily Show with Jon Stewart, it would be a huge help to me. But follow along here. This author had written a book. The book was so intriguing to the people at the Daily Show that they asked him on to be a guest to talk about what was in his book. And what was in that book was a description of a new religion. Okay? Are you with me so far? Right? But keep in mind, Jon Stewart's show, like, it was, he either had, A-list actors, high-level politicians, and people who wrote really good, interesting, intriguing books, right? There was no slouches on that show. You didn't have people on that show that were crappy. You know what I mean? This book that he had written was truly intriguing to either Jon Stewart or his staff or both. And this book was about new religions. So just really quick, right? When we talk about religions, there's really just the big five anymore. There's Christianity, which includes Catholics and Protestants. There's Islam, which includes Sunni and Shia and everybody else. There's Judaism, right? There's Buddhism, and there's Hinduism. I mean, there's Sikhs, and there's, whatever the Maori people do and whatever. But for the most part, there's really, most of the world, well, almost 100% of the world either fits into some sort of Christian or some sort of Muslim category. The rest, that's right there. There's 5 billion people right there, and there's only 7 billion people. So the rest of the world falls into those categories. So if I were to tell you that there was a reemergence of like an old religion, right? Like whatever the pharaohs believed, right? Like they believed in Ra, right? And they were going to, there was this new religion that was just kind of a rehash of like this old religion of, whatever it was that the ancient Egyptians believed. Like you would think, that's kind of kooky. That's weird. Like, why would you do that? And if I told you like there was a new system of government, right? Not in America, but like, I don't know, say Peru, right? Oh, in fact, this will be a perfect example. Like, let's say Peru, that had, very close ties to, Aztec, like the Aztec kingdom that was all throughout that whole region down there. If all of a sudden Peru's government, right, whoever their president or king or whatever, if the leader of Peru came out and said, hey, you know what? We are going to reinstitute the government as prescribed by the ancient Aztecs. We're going to start human sacrifices again. We're going to sacrifice these humans to the volcano and whatever. Like you would look at that and you would think, boy, that's really dumb. Like we have figured this out to this point. That's really dumb that you're doing that. Or if Egypt did that, like, hey, we're gonna, instead of calling me president from now on, whoever the president or leader of Egypt is, if that guy got on a microphone, got on TV and said, from now on, I want everybody to refer to me as Pharaoh. I am the incarnation of Ra, and that's how we're gonna run our government from now on. Like you would look at that and hear that and think, wow, that's really, like, you're a really stupid person if you're going to try to do that. Like we already know, we've grown past that, right? Well, you don't hear very much about new religions anymore. You hear about rehashing, like that guy, Warren Jeffs, or something Jeffs. Was it Warren Jeffs? That guy that got busted for having all those wives, the Mormon guy, right? He was like a hardcore fundamental Mormon, and he lived on he had this huge compound, and he went to prison for polygamy, but the biggest problem with the polygamy was that one of his wives, or several of his wives, were like really like pubescent, like 13 years old, 12 years old, like that sort of age. And so that's what they got. There's all kinds of polygamous camps in Utah, by the way. But no, the Fed doesn't really bother them because it's like, well, they're all grown up, you know what I mean? Like we don't really, we've got bigger fish to fry. But with Jeffs, I want to say it was Warren Jeffs. He got busted because he was particularly egregious. But when you hear about stuff like that, it's like, well, that's not really a new religion. That's just a weird, offshoot of Mormonism, right? So anyways, this guy, who I cannot tell you what his name is, and I can't tell you what the name of his book is, and I am sorry about that. I'm sorry, but I know what I saw. I saw it on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. That much I can tell you, like, I am confident of. He comes out with this book, and in this book he says, listen, in Washington, D.C. and in political circles in the United States, there is a new religion. And he said the name of it, but of course I can't tell you what that is because I don't remember, and I can't find it on the internet. So listen, I understand how frustrating that is. It's frustrating for me to say it because it's like, dude, don't. I hate it when people do that to me, and I'm sorry to do that to you. Anyways, okay, that's the last of the apologies. Let me get on to the point. So this guy wrote this book that was so compelling to The Daily Show with Jon Stewart that they had him on, and he said, listen, there is a group of people in the government, a large group of people that have this newfangled religion, and the doctrine of their religion is that because of the ancient texts and the holy texts of the Christians and the Jews and the Hindus and like all these other religions, that what they have come to an agreement on is that all authority belongs to God, and therefore if you have authority, you are God. Therefore, since you are God, there is nothing that you can do that is wrong because you are God, and God cannot be wrong. Follow? And it went even deeper than that, and he got into some really crazy things. We are in a very strange time right now. And if you try to separate spirituality from pragmatism, you're going to be led astray. These things that are going on are very real, right? We really had a communist as the leader of the CIA until just recently. There really is over $40 billion a year that is allotted by the federal government to go to CPS to take children away from their parents. $40 billion, right? Taking children away from their parents should happen, right? It should happen in very extreme circumstances. Not $40 billion a year, you know what I mean? $40 billion covers a lot of circumstances. Children should be taken from their parents when they are in horrifically abusive situations, when there's a great deal of drug abuse going on, you know what I mean? Like things like that. But $40 billion a year, like that's happening. And that is indicative of a spiritual problem, right? You're talking about stealing children from their parents. That is a very metaphysical, very spiritual problem. You cannot separate the two, right? So you have to approach it pragmatically, and you also have to, at the same time, simultaneously approach it spiritually, because there are spiritual things happening. This guy got on Jon Stewart and he said, look, there is a real thing that's happening, and it's very spiritual in nature, and it applies only to politicians, right? This is a religion, a cult that has formed itself, manifests itself in our federal government. This is what these people believe. They believe that since they have authority, that is verification that they are in fact God, and therefore they cannot, it is impossible for them to do anything wrong or evil. You see what I'm saying? You see how dangerous that sort of belief can be? Now, the reason I'm saying that is one of the main purposes of this show is because I can see, just as you can see, there's something coming, and it's going to be upon us very soon, and we don't know what it is, but it looks very violent, and it looks like it has an intention for us that involves a great deal of harm, bloodshed, and death. That's what it looks like, right? You have to be prepared for it. You have to be confident in your position for sure. You have to remain calm, right? Because there's going to be some things some responsibilities that are going to be put on you that are going to be very daunting. And if you're not calm, right? If you're not confident, those things will overwhelm you. And you won't be able to navigate those things easily. If you don't have a good, solid meditational life, right? If you don't, if you're the kind of person that knows that you need to be reading more books, right? Or if you know that you need to be reading books, period, just start reading books, right? Start reading. Read. Not Danielle Steele books or Harry Potter, but, read history books. Read about Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Read about, President George Washington and his history and the things that he wrote. Read about people. Read about history. You know what I mean? Read the Federalist Papers. God, that's the Federalist Papers. That's just a rabbit hole of deep thought. Like you could have, if you just had the Bible and the Federalist Papers, like you could spend the rest of your life with nothing else. You know what I mean? Like you would just be so busy all the time with thought on those things that you just wouldn't have room. You know what I mean? But fall in love with reading again. That's one of the biggest forms of meditation is reading. Read. Leaders are readers. Or readers are leaders? Yeah, it's one of those two. And give voice to the people that are on your side. I was in a discussion yesterday, the guy from Boston, and one thing that you have to keep in mind is that there is economics in the kingdom of heaven, right? And a lot of those economic principles have been discovered, right? There's things called the Matthew principle. There's a principle called velocity. There's 3 modern books. Last time I checked, there were only 3 modern day books written on the subject, but it's talked about extensively in scriptures. I'm not going to get into it right now, but there's economics to living your life and how you interact with other people. And so if you see somebody like I was messaging back and forth with Brennan, the leader of the Walk Away movement. Finally got a hold of him. Brandon, thank you so much for writing me back. But listen, I want to give voice to people like that because it's like, here's a guy that was a lefty McLefterson his whole life, and then you realize like, oh, these people that I have so much admiration for, but these people they're just angry all the time, and they're just going around calling innocent people like racist and Nazis or whatever, and I just, you know what? I'm sorry, I cannot be associated with that. I'm gonna go away. I'm gonna walk away. And he did, and he stood up and he said, I'm walking away, #walk away. And he started this whole movement, and a whole bunch of people said, yeah, like I get you. I get it. I don't want to be angry all day either. I don't want to have contempt for my fellow man, my fellow American. I don't want to walk around with contempt. It's heavy. It feels bad in my body. It feels like darkness. It feels like cowardice and weakness. I don't want that. And so that's what he did. And what what that caused, right? Because he was strong enough, he was courageous enough to stand up and say, I'm out. I'm out of here. Right? But there's still a lot of people out there that have never heard of Brandon Straka. Right? They've never heard of the good David Hogg. They've never heard of C.J. Pearson. They've never heard of these people. Because, the YouTube algorithm won't, put the videos up on their feed or their Twitter feed or whatever, for whatever reason. Maybe they just don't like social media and they just never heard of it, but they're still hanging around with leftists going, yeah, I don't know, guys. It just seems like we're angry all the time. And the economic principle that I'm getting at here is that I can get a hold of Brandon Straka and say, Brandon, you come on my show, right? Sit down, we'll have a conversation, we can record it, and then we can put that out into the universe, right? We can put that out on the internet in hopes that if we can just find one more person who's struggling the way that you were struggling before the realization hit you, that no, you're a grown-ass man, you can do whatever you want. You can follow your conscience. You can get up, and walk out, and walk away from it, right? You, Brandon Straka, you came to that realization, but there's people out there, a lot more people out there, who are in the same place that you were 5 minutes before that realization hit you in the dome. There's a lot more people out there like that, and all they need is to have somebody, anybody, whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's somebody else on Twitter, right? There's a great number of people that are sort of, growing in fame and growing in stature. All they need to do is just hear it. Like, hey man, it's okay. It's okay to be an adult. It's okay to question not only the people around you, but question yourself. And if you're sitting there thinking like, hey, all this hatred that I have for white people or Republican people or Christian people, like all this hatred that I have, it feels bad in my body. I don't like this. You know what I mean? Those people are moments away. They're right on the edge of saying out loud with their mouths, I'm done. I've had it. This is untenable. I can't maintain this. I can't maintain this thing. Do you have any idea? Right? Like I'm a pretty happy guy. I'm a pretty peaceful guy, but I wasn't always. You know what I mean? I had to put in a lot of work. I had to read a lot. I had to do a lot of meditation, learn how to pray. You know what I mean? There was a lot of things that went into it. And when people walk around angry all the time, like it's not just bad for their soul, it's bad for your physical, it's bad for your organs, right? There's a chemical that releases in your body when you're angry, that although there is a place for anger, there's a reason why we have those chemicals in our body to become angry or to become happy or to laugh or whatever. We have all these different chemicals. That chemical that I'm sure has a good and godly and righteous purpose, that chemical that is associated with anger, it's devastating to your internal organs. It's very hard on soft tissue. And when coroners and those kind of people, when they examine a dead body and they open them up, and this is verifiable, by the way, sometimes they'll open people up and they'll see their inner organs are very hard. This was a very angry person. Like they know, like coroners and people who do autopsies and that sort of. It's not coroner. What's the other medical examiner? That's what it is. They know that when they open somebody up and they see that all their organs are all hardened, they know. It's like anger causes that. It's bad for your body, and so these people are walking around all the time feeling bad. So there's a whole crop of people out there that it's like the only thing missing is somebody to come alongside of them and say, dude, it's okay. You can come over and hang out with us, and we're happy over here, right? You can come over here and be happy, and we will embrace you, right? It's okay. It's okay that you walked around with a bad group of people. It's okay. It's okay. You know what I mean? We've all made a bunch of mistakes. It's okay. just come on over here and be happy. Not everybody's a Nazi. Not everybody's a racist. You know what I mean? Nobody's trying to kill anybody. Like, come on home. And it's that sort of thing that, on this show, the new show, the Arch Advocate show, that I want to talk about the economics of doing that. Because the more you do that, the more that you encourage people and speak life into people, the more it comes back around, right? There's an economics to it. The more you give away those kind of riches, the more it comes back. There's also another element, right? That, like, I get hate mail all the time. I get people saying horrible, like truly disgusting, horrible things to me because of the things that I talk about on this show. But compared to the times that people write me and they say, you know what, dude, thank you. And when I see people who just write very simple, like, hey, thanks, man, thanks for keeping up, that sort of thing. The way that I interpret that is they're saying, like, hey, thanks for letting me know that I'm not alone in this. You know what I mean? I think you're saying the same things that I'm thinking, and I was over here thinking that I was the only one thinking it, right? Because one of the most common, common experiences in the human existence is the feeling of overwhelming loneliness. Everybody feels that at some point or another, and most people feel it all the time. That's like one of the most common things that people feel is they feel alone, right? And so when you reach out to people, when you, dear listener, reach out to people, right? You reach out on Twitter and say, hey, man, I'll just write to like David Hogg and C.J. Pearson's or Brandon Straka, or there's another lady, I keep wanting to call her Shakira, but it's not. But I'll just write them and say, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing. I really appreciate you. I appreciate that you're being outspoken. I appreciate that you're speaking. Thank you. The more you do that, the more powerful people become, and you become more powerful. There is an economic principle that applies to that. And so I want to encourage you. Yes, keep listening to the show and subscribing to it on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, all that. Hit subscribe on the YouTube show. Right? If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe. Would you please hit share? Right? But also subscribe to other people and let them know. You write them a message and be like, hey, man, it doesn't have to be a poem. Just write, hey, man, I appreciate your work. Hit send. Right? Hit save. Whatever, it's easy. And together we're going to get through this, and there will be no getting through this without community. That I can guarantee you. There is no church without community. You cannot be, and I'm talking to, I know not everybody listening is a Christian, but listen, if you are a Christian, there is no Christianity without community. It can't be done, right? The reason why we have to put up with other Christian people is because that's the Christian walk, right? You have to learn how to put up with other people's garbage. It's part of it. That's part of your maturation process as a Christian person. You have to put up with other people's nonsense and garbage, right? But in that context, it's like, well, nobody's going to kill you. It's not going to kill you to do this. But that, that's another thing. Like, just you have to get whoever you are, Christian or not, whatever. You are right now finding out, and if you haven't, you are about to. You are finding out the magical, the miraculous power of community. It's one of the most powerful things on the planet, and we will not be getting through this, whatever it is that we're going through as the human race and as a nation. We will not be able to get through this without the power of community. Absolutely. I can say that as if it were the Word of God. You will not get through this. We will not get through this problem without community. Right? And in our community, we have people. You know what I mean? They're already in place, and you need to find your place. You know what I mean? Find your place. Find your place. Like whoever Q is, the anonymous Q, whoever that is a person who is in a high level of of government, right? They're in place. God put them there, right? Then you've got Brandon Straka, and you've got, Anomaly, Legendary Energy on Twitter. Anomaly's out there. Fleckus is out there, right? Tim Pool is out there. Like, there's a bunch of people that are out there. Gavin McInnes is out there. Even Alex Jones is out there. And Paul Joseph Watson is out there. Like, everybody, Tommy Robinson is out there. You know what I mean? And then there's, everybody has a place. And everybody is needed. Find your place. Join in the conversation. And you can start by just encouraging people. Just speak words of encouragement. Even just the words, hey, thank you. That's very encouraging to people. It lets people know that they're not alone. Right? There's no place in your life where you're ever going to ascend and get away from that feeling of like, man, am I the only one thinking this? No, that's going to be your whole life. You're never going to get past that. Right? And the way that you kill that feeling of loneliness, the way that you get yourself exempt from that feeling of like you're the only one thinking it or you're the only one feeling it, there's only one cure for it, and it's community. It's powerful. That's the show for today. Go on to archadvocate.com, click on my Twitter. Join me on Twitter. Click on my Reddit page. Subscribe to that. Go on to my Telegram page. Telegram is an open forum, live communication with other members of that forum. There's also a little phone feature to it. Like if you really want to talk to somebody, like if you're in a conversation and you just want to hear their voice and talk with them voice to voice, there's a phone thing on there too. It's free. It's awesome. Go on to archadvocate.com, join the mailing list, right? If you want to support the show, you can do that too. You can become a Patreon member, a patron. Do monthly allotments. You can do $1 a month. You can do $10,000 a month. In fact, if you do $10,000 a month, make sure you let me know. You can just send some dough like on a one-time thing if you want to do that with PayPal. You can do that too. That's it for today. I will talk to you tomorrow. Beware of the communists. Till then.